Welcome to the Art of Dress. Today I'm very happy to share with you part 2 of hats, and we're going to look at the brim. So thank you so much for coming and thank you for subscribing. As you remember, in part 1 of hats, we spent most of the time looking at the crown of the hat. And today we're going to add to the crown the brim. So it won't be looking at just the brim, it will be combining the hat, crown and brim together. But before I do that, I have quite a few relationships to explain to you. And one of the relationships that I'm going to explain is how the brim can be structured. And so Leah Kabede here in this beautiful hat that we'll see again in a minute is showing you a hat that's very thick. But it's because it has texture, or it can just have width at the brim. And by width, I mean really height, actually. I don't mean width of the brim, I mean how thick is it. And so I'm not going to call it height or width of the brim because it's too confusing. So I'm just going to say a curled brim. And just like hair, your brim can curl up like a cowboy hat or a bowler. Your brim can curl down, and even sometimes a bucket hat is like this. Or it can have a lot of volume like you see in this example. So that's going to be part of the brim that I'm going to explain in every case. So now for the other relationships. So this is where we started last time. This is the Zodiac Wheel. We've seen it before. It's the wheel of fabric weight, scale, and also simplicity. Every style is on it and every style has a number. This wheel looks a little different than the other wheel we did for this exact thing because I moved the True Classic out of the center and put it on the outside. And when you do that, it has its number. It had a number whether it was in the center or not. And as you remember, these are numbered according to, let's say, fabric weight, one example. So number 1 means very low fabric weight, and number 13 is maximum fabric weight. True Classics are the same fabric weight. So on this, they are going to have the same number. Now, because it's getting a little more crowded, in order to make it look better, I just used True Classic Alpha. I used the alpha sign instead of the True Classic style symbol. And for True Classic Omega, I used the Omega symbol. They're up at the top there, number 10, and you can see. So this is the wheel for hats, and it's a normal Zodiac wheel except for the movement of the True Classics. So why do we want this? The first thing we used this for, we used it for the crown height. And as you know, 13, elaborate natural, had the largest crown, wore the largest crown as a natural sort of prototype hat. And True Classics have a number 10 relative to 13. So they're moving towards the smaller crown, but still above the middle. So this same wheel can be used for other reasons to explain hats. And the first one that I want to show you is hat ornamentation. So what does hat ornamentation mean? First of all, hat ornamentation means a ribbon. It might mean flowers. It might mean sparkly things. Anything that you put at the join of the crown and the brim is hat ornamentation. Now it can extend beyond the join, but where the crown meets the brim is what we're really talking about here. And half of the styles, with True Classic being counted as 2 styles, half of the styles wear ornamentation and half of the styles do not on their hats. So on the left-hand side of the wheel, you see ornamented styles, ornamented hats for these styles. So starting at the top, I guess we could start with refined dramatic. Yes, wears ornamentation. Then comes alpha true classic. Then comes elaborate classic. Then comes refined gammon, the refined natural, true gammon, and elaborate romantic #1. So people in those styles always wear their hats with ornamentation. And the other styles, the opposite, do not like ornamentation on their hats, look better without it. So that would be elaborate natural, that's #13, then elaborate gammon, then the true classic omega, you just see the omega sign there, true dramatic, true natural, true romantic, and refined classic. Prefer a simple join, no ornamentation, not even a hat band, better with nothing. Okay, so that's the first new thing that the Zodiac Wheel shows us. It shows us something else also, something very important. And this is the relationship between the brim and the crown. So first of all, there is like a prototype relationship. And this is what I talked about at the very beginning of the last video. And I will remind you that all air styles wear hats. I'm going to explain each style as an air, a fire, a water, and earth style as we go through them. But just as a summary, all air styles wear typically a very small brim, regardless of the crown size, which is part of their style. Just by virtue of being an air style, small brim. If you are an earth style, that's next, you wear a medium small brim as a prototype, no matter what your crown height. Third is water styles, a medium sized brim. And fourth is fire styles, a medium large brim. So we have the variation: air, earth, water, fire. Now, that does not imply that you can never wear a really large brim or you can never wear an extra small, tiny brim. No, I'm only talking about your typical, this is where you start. And now this slide comes in because your brim and your crown have a relationship depending on where you are on this wheel. At the top of the wheel, we have all the styles that have a large crown. And in this case, the size of the crown and the size of the brim are inversely proportionate, inversely related. So let me show you what I mean. Here we are, and this is going to be our brim. Pretty small, that's probably like earth. And let's say that this is the crown. Okay, so this is whoever this is. The crown is normally like twice the brim. Okay, so if this style decides to wear a brim that is double what it was, now the crown goes down by basically the same amount that the brim went up. So that's an inverse relationship. One is getting bigger and the other's getting smaller. And it can go the other way as well. Let's say you started with this kind of this size of a brim and this size of a crown, and you decided to make the brim smaller, the crown gets larger. Inverse relationship. So the styles that holds true for are, I'm going to show you with each example, but all the ones on top: elaborate natural, refined dramatic, elaborate gammon, true classic alpha, true classic omega, elaborate classic, and true dramatic. Inverse relationship. One gets large, the other gets small. On the bottom, you have all the styles that have relatively low crown. This starts with refined gammon, that's number 7, and all the way around. In this case, it's a direct relationship. So if you started with, say, this much crown here and this much brim, and you expanded your brim, now your crown goes up approximately the same amount. You expand it farther, your crown goes up farther. Direct relationship. One gets big, the other gets big. One gets small, the other gets small. And we're talking about brim and crown, brim and crown. Okay, so now I can show you examples, which is the fun part. So that's the Zodiac Wheel, very helpful for us in understanding hats. First off, we have elaborate natural, and that is Chanel Iman. And as you remember, she's a water style, so her prototype hat is just this pure medium brim and a high crown. So here she's wearing a much larger brim and basically a flat crown. So what happened? The brim got larger, the crown got smaller. So that's the inverse relationship. What else is going on here? Well, the flatness of the top of her head makes perfect sense because she's architectural, so that's great. And also she has no ornament at the join, just those feathers and no hat band, no ribbons, nothing like that. And she's also has just the number was 13. So that's why she's working with basically this kind of a very large width. And she's even carried a larger width, but really, really cute for her because of all these aspects. Okay, next is Refined Dramatic, and that is Rosie Huntington Whiteley. So she is an earth style. So you remember, you can't see the crown. I'll show you another example later on of the what happens with harmonics, because harmonics wear that dent, but we can't see that here. But what we can see is that her crown has gotten smaller and her brim has gotten larger. And even though she has a hat band that just matches, it still is important for her, and it looks really good to have it there. And even more so, I want to show you another example with even better ornamentation. Here we are, and in this case, this is kind of what Chanel Iman's hat did. It's a little more rounded on top because she's not flat, she's not architectural, she's harmonic. So there is some kind of a waviness going on at the top of her head, but the crown is really small and the brim is really large. Inverse relationship, and you see all the chiffon is acting as ornament for her hat. It looks amazing. Next example, Anais Mali. So here we have the harmonic top of the hat, perfect. And she is normally a high crown and a smaller brim because she is an air style. She wears the smallest, typically. So her brim is expanding a lot and her crown is also diminishing a lot. So one getting bigger and one getting smaller, inverse relationship. Now, she is actually better without that hat band. It's too bad it's there. And you see this so many times. She'll wear a hat with no hat band. Looks just amazing on her. But still, really, really cute and shows so many aspects. And you can see this is really nice at the top of her head for what a harmonic hat should always do at the very top of the head. So next up is Leah Kabede. We already saw. Now Leah has the dual aspect. She has the air style and the fire style. And obviously this hat with all of this embellishment is much more in the idea of air, but all the texture and lack of structure is still bringing in the combination of air and fire. And once again, a much smaller crown and a much wider brim looks amazing for her. Next comes our other true classic, and this is Elle Fanning. And as you know, she is the Omega true classic. So my apologies, Elle, for showing a picture of you as a child actress, but it's just that this is the very best example of what's happening here. So she is an water earth style, and she wears a curled brim, and she is showing you that the curved brim has actually gotten smaller, and so now the top of the hat is getting higher. So that's what I wanted to show, and that's why this picture is so perfect. Sadly, there is a ribbon on her hat. It looks even, a double ribbon. It looks even better on her without that ornamentation. but this is just a perfect example of the brim getting smaller and the crown getting larger. So I wanted to show it. And you can see that even as a child, of course, style is still in effect. And the more youth forces, of course, the more fresh and lovely you look, whether or not you're in your style. But even if you are very young, being in your style is still perfect. So now we come to the next one, which is number 9, and this is Jasmine Gori, Elaborate Classic. And the first example I wanted to show you of her is this amazing hat, showing how the curled brim also turns into width of height, I guess you'd have to call it, but like a lot more going on. So much so that we can't even see the crown of this hat, but it still looks amazing on her, because really the height of the brim is actually, it doesn't matter because it's giving her the height that she needs. And this is a pretty typical example of her width as the kind of fire style that she is. But she also can do this inverse relationship. This unbelievable hat, it's hard to imagine anyone else carrying this hat with this kind of beauty and grace. It's so fantastic. But it is the same thing. A curved brim also can go very wide or very thick, you could say, very thick. And that's what you have here. And also lots of ornament. And these are all aspects for her. She is a fire style. All the fire styles wear ornamented hats. She is composite, rounding at the top with all of this softness happening. Also, she is normally a very high brim, but because of the width, that inverse relationship pulls the, high crown, pulls the crown down as the brim goes out. So really stunning and so fun to see this great example from the 90s. Now we are at the very last of the high crowns, and this is a pretty typical hat for her. This isn't a difference. She's of all the high crowns, she's the smallest of the high crowns, and she also is a water style, so her brim is normally just medium, but what I'm showing you here is the curved brim that looks so fantastic on her, and also no ornament, just really, really simple and beautiful, and as you can see, stunning. So now we come to the change. Now we go to the low crowns, and so we're going to see a completely different relationship. The relationship between crown and brim is now a direct relationship. If one gets bigger, the other gets bigger. If one gets smaller, the other gets smaller also. So here we have Micah Janelli. And she is a fire style. You can see the dip. She's also harmonic, so that's the dimple or the sort of wave going on in the top of the head. And she is normally just at the middle in terms of crown height, but she is a fire style, and so she wears a medium large brim. This is an extra large brim, large to extra large brim. So her brim has gotten wider and her crown has gotten taller. And that's what you see towards the back. You can see that the crown is quite a bit larger than she normally wears, higher. The crown is higher and the brim is wider. So direct relationship. So here we have Arlenis Sosa, our true natural. She is composite, and so she wears a slightly rounded top. We can't really see that, sadly, but it's likely in this hat. And she normally wears a very small brim. So her brim has gotten larger because this is earth kind of brim, maybe even a little bigger, in between earth and water perhaps. So and her crown has gotten higher as a result. She also wears a flat brim, not curved, and she also wears no ornamentation if possible, just plain. So it's hard to see if there's anything going on there, maybe not. And the fact that it's all in one color is helpful. So it looks very simple, and that's what she wants, no ornament at her hat. Now we see This is Refined Natural, and this is Josephine Scriver. Such a fun style. And there's a little bit of an optical illusion going on here because the band that's so wide would normally be quite narrow for her, or at least pretty narrow because she is an alpha style. But the ornament looks fantastic. She is an earth style, so her prototype hat would be the second sort of a medium small kind of brim. And this is really like medium, almost medium large perhaps. And so you can see that the crown of the hat is still high even after you put that wide band there. So it looks amazing. And also the feathers look fantastic on her. So very nice example of the brim getting larger and the crown getting larger as well. So now we reach the final 4 styles. This is Gigi Hadid, True Romantic, and she is a harmonic, so that's why the dimple at the top there, the 2 pushed in places, amazing. She wears normally an air style. She wears the very smallest brim, the really small, and now you can see that her brim has gotten quite a bit larger, and so the crown has gotten larger. Direct relationship. And also no ornament for her around her hat at the join between the brim and the crown. So really a lovely example for her of the direct relationship. Joan Smalls, True Gammon. So this hat is very interesting. First of all, she is in a water style. She is also architectural. So the flat top, this is pretty flat. The flat top is amazing for her. And the size of brim that she would normally wear is on the left. The right is getting quite a bit larger. So what we would like to see, I couldn't find actually an example of this, but what we would like to see is the left side of the brim and the right side of the crown. That puts her hat in perfect proportion, exactly what she likes to wear. With the larger brim on the right side, you would want to actually see a larger crown as well. But the ornament is fantastic, lovely for her, and the rhythm of ornament is lovely, and it's just all together a pretty good example of a water style wearing a really nice hat. Next is our Refined Classic, and this is Rita Gustafson, and here she is an earth style, and she is also sculptural. So for the earth part, what you want to see is the small brim, not extra small, but the small brim. This is more like water, so we've moved from small to medium in the brim. So you would expect her crown to go from pretty small, because she's number 2, to higher, and that's what's happening. And it's really good in every way. It's pretty good in terms of the sculptural aspect, and it's really good in every other way. Curled brim, which is what she likes to wear, no ornament, which is what she needs, otherwise just amazing for her. So there's another example that I wanted to show you of her, because if you are Refined Classic, you might think, oh, I can't even wear hats. But so here is an example. This is a really good sculptural hat at the top, because it's showing like the exact shape of the skull. It's like a skull head, skull cap. And then she's also showing you now, instead of her earth style small brim, she's going to extra large. And so the crown is also increasing quite a lot. Could even increase more, although this is already a lot of crown for a Refined Classic to wear. But you can see that it does the job, and it looks so stunning on her and so compelling. And again, a curled brim, this time curled under, and also no ornament at the join of the crown and the brim. So really lovely example of the direct relationship. When the brim gets larger, the crown gets higher for Refined Classic. And our last example is always this elaborate romantic, and this is Jordan Dunn. And she's wearing a very stunning hat. She has moved from medium large to large in her brim, and she has moved from from small to quite large in her crown. And so you're getting the one expanding this way and the crown expanding that way. Amazing. Now, she always wears ornaments, so the hat band is really nice. It's a little hard to see if that, it would be even better if it were perfectly flat and not this taper. At the very top, it is straight, but it does this taper, which is not quite as good, but still really stunning on her, and a lovely example of elaborate romantic architectural with a flat crown, an ornamented hat, in this case, a larger brim, so a larger crown. And so there are the examples, 13 styles and different ways that hats work for your different style. You will have to see your exact description in your aspect of the website, because it's tailored to each individual, your websites, and those are just around the corner now. And the last thing I wanted to say is that there is still one more category of hats. We haven't addressed everyday hats like baseball caps or a pullover hat like a toque, and also some fantastical hats. So that is the last part of hats part 3. So thank you very much for coming and subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Please take care.